It's my pleasure to welcome all of you this evening to a special lecture with a special guest, Brother Abdualla Al-Andalusi, coming all the way from Europe. Inshallah, I'll leave you with Brother Abdul Halim, the president of MSA chapter in Henry Ford College, to introduce, inshallah, the speaker.
Assalamu alaikum. Abdualla Andalusi is an intellectual activist, revivalist thinker, and international speaker based in the UK. He has spoken at various lectures. And TV channels on a variety of topics, including Islamic theology, revivalism, political philosophy, and a critique of secularism and liberalism. Abdualla has appeared on TV channels and conducted debates on a variety of topical issues. He is currently the director of the public debate platform, the Muslim Debate Initiative.
Can everyone hear me okay? Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Nabiyyil Kareem Muhammad wa ala alihi tayyibin wa sahbihi salihin. Assalamu alaikum. I'd like to thank the Franklin Masjid and Islamic School and also the MSA of Henry Ford Community College, Brother Halim, for arranging for me to be here today, to be in America, to be coming here to Franklin. Is it here? Just a bit more closer, yeah? All right. And being able to meet brothers and sisters from around the world and see how wonderfully diverse my 1.6 billion family is. So, alhamdulillah, today's discussion is titled "The Purpose of Life," and in some ways this mirrors my conversion to Islam as well, and the thinking process that led me to becoming a Muslim. And I think it's very important discussion, a very key one, that we understand why we are a Muslim and why we've chosen Islam. Because if we understand why we're Muslim, then we can better communicate that to others, why Islam is the truth. Because simply saying that we were born into a Muslim family isn't sufficient to convince other people that Islam is true. And having seen the beauty of Islam coming from a place where I wasn't not guided and I didn't know what the truth was and I was confused as a non-Muslim, I really appreciated the hidayah, the guidance that was given to me, and I hope and pray that Allah guides and continues to guide all of us. But this discussion will be an intellectual one, and I will keep it rational and objective, and I'll base it around the things that we can see, the things that we can observe in the universe, and inshallah come to a conclusion about the truth. And hopefully you'll be able to take non-Muslims on this journey of investigation to help them realize the truth as well. Humans have the capacity to question meaning and naturally the purpose of life. It is a fundamental question upon which all other questions are based, and so it is the most important question of them all to ask. It is very interesting to note that people generally only ask the question, how? How do I get a job? How do I get a better job? How do I get an agreeable partner? How do I spend my Friday night? How do I get people to notice me or respect me or spend time with me? It's how? But the interesting thing is that no one ever asks why. So why am I living my life? For what reason am I pursuing all these objectives? Why should I follow what the culture of what society has given me? Or why should I follow the religion that my parents taught me? So no one ever asks the question why, but they ask the question how. So I think that the real question that we should ask ourselves, and obviously ask the non-Muslims to ask themselves as well, is what should we be doing? Most human beings blindly accept the environment and the information they are taught. If we blindly accept the values we are told, then how can we ever truly make a choice on what is the truth or what we should be following? But more importantly, how can we ever be sure that what we are taught is true? Maybe the truth is something completely different to what we think we know, and maybe not bothering to seek it or discover it will have serious consequences both within our lives and possibly in a future reality we haven't yet experienced. So seeing the seriousness of this question, let us embark upon a rational investigation from what we know and see if a solution to this question is available or not. But before I begin, I must emphasize the importance of sincerity in this investigation. Sincerity is approaching a topic without emotional bias or unsubstantiated assumptions, especially those based upon a pre-existing viewpoint to life which itself is unproven. So now let us investigate the issue of today's lecture both rationally and objectively, without assumptions and without being slanted by bias. What is the purpose of life? Well, if I'm going to be true to the promise and not make assumptions, then I think we should start with a question that occurs before asking the question, what is the purpose of life? Is there even a purpose to life or existence? Or does everything exist have no meaning and we're all just a result of a big accident? So first I want to ask, what do we mean by purpose? Well, purpose means that there's a reason for something to exist. That thing that exists is intended. There's an intention behind it. The reason for something to exist would constitute the higher meaning to its existence. This meaning is the intention behind that existence. Thus, for something to have a purpose, it must be intended. Now, if something could create itself, then it could define its own intention. But because the act of creating oneself requires the one to pre-exist to do so, it's rationally absurd. So what exists around us didn't make itself. So the intention behind one's existence can only come from an external source to the created thing. Therefore, since we did not create ourselves, we must identify the source of our creation and determine if there was an intentionality behind this creation or not. Let's start by what we see in existence that we exist within. So we exist within existence. So everything around us is the reality that we exist within. So what do we see? So we see objects and forces, rocks, mountains, the sun, the moon, gravity, electromagnetic forces, quantum particles, and so on and so forth. These objects all have characteristics and limitations that define what they are, how they behave, and to what degree they interact with other things. These things seem mindless and operate within a determined set of laws that came into existence along with their creation. But how do we know they were created? Forget the recent scientific discovery of the Big Bang. Let us use the rational method that has been available since the first human being, which is observation and deduction based on what we can observe. These objects and forces that we see operate under laws, and these laws describe the relationship between the attributes of different objects and forces to other objects and forces. For example, the relationship between two objects of mass is gravity, which would attract them together. So that's their relationship between these two objects. And all the objects in the universe, all forces, have a relationship between themselves. This force of gravity is determined by the amount of mass each object has proportional to the distance they are from one another. It seems that all objects with defined attributes cannot choose different attributes for themselves, and they are limited to the forms they come in. The rational question to ask is, what gave these limited forms the attributes they possess? Since the very fact that they have this limited form, a particular ability and a particular existence, means that they were determined by something. Something measured out these proportions, something determined the mass of these two objects, like two planets or suns, or gravity, or the total amount of matter in the universe. It's not double than what it is, it's not half of what it is, it's a specific amount. So the question is, why is it that particular amount and not bigger or lesser than that? Something determined its size and its proportion. I've already shown how absurd it is to consider something could create itself. So the only conclusion we can come to is the following rule. Anything that exists, which is finite and limited, was created by some means and by something else. This is the rational law of cause and effect, otherwise known as causality. Almost every human thought is based upon causality. From detective work, to a sportsman's gaming performance, to business income, to scientific experimentation, and making conclusions from the results of experiments. Everything is based on cause and effect. So if I was to test, if I was to train a pet cat, I don't have a pet cat, but if I was to train my pet cat, and I would train it in a certain way, and it behaved a certain way, and then I offered it, let's say, a cookie, and it didn't like the cookie, and then I offered it some cat food, and it liked the cat food, I can conclude that the change of behavior, the effect, was because of the cause, the change in the cause. I offered it cat food, it ate the cat food. I offered it a cookie, it behaved differently. So we can see that there is a cause and effect happening, and it is basic human rationality. We use it all the time. So now we know that there must be something else which created the limited objects and forces we observe. The next rational question to ask is, what is the nature of this something else which created everything we can observe? There can only be two options. Either it is essentially limited and finite as well, like the objects it created, or it is not limited and it is not finite. Let's consider the first option. If what created the limited objects in the universe is also finite and limited as well, then this does not answer the question, but merely defers it to the next level up. Because you could say, then what created that then? This other thing, this external thing to the universe, which created the universe, then what created that? If it is also limited and it also is finite. And if we constantly opted for an option of limited and finite cause and effects going on forever, then the ultimate question would never be answered, and this would mean that nothing would actually come into existence. And I use my famous example, which is basically like this. If you have a domino rally, so one domino placed in front of the other in forming a chain, and if I started off with a domino chain that has no beginning, there is no beginning to this domino chain, would any of the dominoes falling down, there must be a point where it's pushed. There must be a point where a domino is being pushed. But if the chain of dominoes goes on forever, infinitely, there will never be any start point. There will never be any place where you could begin pushing the dominoes for them to begin falling down. So you'd never reach any point in that chain because no domino would ever fall down. Likewise, if this universe had an infinite number of universes before it, which caused this universe to come to existence through an infinite chain, we wouldn't reach this point. You'd have to cross infinity to reach this point. How can you cross infinity? And where is the first starting point? Won't be there. I use another example which I commonly use. Imagine I needed $1 and I did not have any money. And I needed $1 to pay for a sandwich. I asked a colleague of mine to give me $1. They did not have $1. They asked their friend to give them $1. That person also didn't have $1. And they asked their friend then to ask for $1, and so on. If you asked an infinite number of people who were all poor for $1, would I receive $1? No. It's just rational sense. This is common sense. So to say that there's an infinite number of finite, limited things before this universe that brought this universe into existence is absurd and irrational. So an infinite chain of connected things is impossible. This is called the infinite regress fallacy, and philosophers, scientists, and even atheists have all generally accepted in practice this fallacy, if not grudgingly in belief. Thus, the only solution to the beginning of causality is something which is not finite and not limited. The starting point, the first cause. And of course, in the English language, we have a name for what is something which is not finite and not limited, and that is infinite and unlimited. And I'll call this for this point in time just the first cause. So, what is this infinite and unlimited thing which started everything in existence? Well, that cannot be answered in detail from our point of view, since we are limited and finite objects, gazing up into a reality that has no limit. So our minds will literally not be able to comprehend limitlessness or infinitude or existence beyond time and change and even form. And this is why in the English language the word infinite just means not finite. Infinis from the Latin, not finite, and unlimited just means not limited. That's the only way you can define, give a definition of this thing, is by what it's not, and it's not us. So whatever it is, it's not us, it's not limited, it's not in creation. That's the only fundamental definition you can give it. But now we have reached a very pertinent question. Does this first cause possess intentionality? Because the discussion today is about purpose, and purpose requires intentionality. So does the first cause that caused everything into exist, does it possess intentionality? Since it was uncreated, it would possess no intention behind its own existence. So nothing intended it to exist. But the real question is, did it create everything else with an intention, or was it merely a mindless process? Well, let's consider the possibility of it being a mindless process. This infinite thing creates mindlessly. If this infinite thing caused creative things to exist without intention, then it would not be the first cause. Why do I say this? Because for it to create something mindlessly would mean that something outside of it was causing it to do so. Or some internal mechanism inside it was causing it to create universes. If it is something outside it that's causing this first cause to make universes, then it is not the first cause. Whatever's making it make universes, that's the first cause. And that would just be the second cause, or a link in the chain. And that would start another infinite regression problem, because then what caused that, what caused that, what caused that, you can't escape it. So then that leaves the only other possibility, which is maybe there's an internal mechanism inside this infinite thing that just makes it create universes. But then this mechanism would be more fundamental than the first cause, and this mechanism itself would then be the first cause. And of course, then the question would be, what makes that mechanism want to create universes? And then, and again, that won't have any answer. If you keep saying maybe another mechanism, maybe another mechanism, maybe another mechanism, for infinity, another infinite regression problem, another infinite regression fallacy. There has to be a starting point to actually begin the process of creating universes. Thus, the only conclusion that you can come to, the only conclusion that makes sense, is that the first cause simply chose to initiate the existence of other things. It simply initiated itself, of its own choice, the universe and everything that exists. And it had no motivation making it do it, nor did it do it out of necessity, but rather it did it as an act of its infinite volition, i.e. out of its will. The presence of volition or choice indicates to us that this first cause has a will. So now we know two things. We know that there is a first cause which is infinite and unlimited, and we know it has a will. And all this can be deduced simply from just observing everything that exists around us and trying to eliminate all the impossibilities. As Sherlock Holmes said, once you eliminate all the impossibilities, everything that's left, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. So this is the only possibility that could be. Atheist scientists, in their vain, blustering attempts to deny intentionality in the infinite, claim that this infinite first cause, which even they have to admit exists, is random, and the reason the limitations of our universe came into being was not choice, but rather due to a number of infinite other possibilities being tried, i.e. an infinite number of universes being created as well. This theory is called the multiverse theory, and there exists no scientific evidence nor mathematical requirement for the multiverse to exist. It's simply the only explanation they can come up with to avoid admitting that the infinite will has a will. But there is a problem with this concept. If this multiverse creates, all right, fine, this multiverse or this first cause creates infinite universes, all right, but what's making it create infinite universes? Whether you say infinite universes are created or a few universes are created, they can't escape the fundamental problem is what's making this first cause do it? And they have no answer. They just are hoping that you accept that there's infinite number of universes, and so the reason why all the limitations in this universe, the reason why water boils at 100 degrees centigrade and freezes at 0 degrees centigrade, and that the speed of light is a certain constant, and that gravity is at a certain proportion based on mass and a certain proportionality, and E equals mc squared, is simply because there are an infinite number of other possibilities which have all been tried, and we're just one of all kinds of variety. Like pretty much going into an infinite Walmart, where there's infinite variety, and you're going to get something which is eventually you're going to find everything there. And as I said, they still can't answer the problem that what is making this first cause make all these universes. They can't escape from this. So in conclusion, the form that all the created objects and forces in creation took was chosen. This is now established that there is intentionality behind our creation. Our forms, our limits, and the natural laws in the universe were intended. Contemplate that. Everything around you, the laws in the universe, the sun, the moon, the many suns in the many different star systems and the many different galaxies, and everything that exists was all intended. This intention emanates from an ultimate creator, who either through some process he initiated or through a direct creation that we cannot comprehend, caused everything to exist according to his intention. In summary, we know the creator exists because it created existence, and we know he has a will, or it has a will, because each thing it creates has defined attributes which can only result from making a choice between infinite possibilities. So now this brings us to the actual question of this lecture. What is the purpose or intentionality behind creation? So we have intellectually established that creation emanates from intentionality, since the first cause would not need anything from his creation in terms of sustenance. We can discount that as a possibility. So we're not here to feed him or it to sustain its existence. It doesn't require us to help it maintain its existence. That wouldn't make any sense. However, what is certain is that our existence is certainly a manifestation of the power of this first cause to create. So we are the proof that this first cause has the power to create. First, the first thing we can conclude about our purpose is that we are evidence of the existence of the creating power of the first cause. And now I shall call this first cause using the term the creator, since that defines the first relationship between us and this first cause is creation. So I will call it now the creator. Now the intention behind our existence might be merely just to exist as a testament to the creator, but there are additional considerations we need to take into account. Firstly, we exist under laws and relationships. These laws and relationships are part and parcel of our intended existence. So our purpose would include being participant in the laws of creation. So because there are laws of creation which interact with each other and change happens, and we live in change and we interact with everything, then it's intended for us to be part of this interaction. We can conclude this just by observation. Secondly, the objects and forces that were created are not static, we're not all frozen in time. They change. We exist in a changing landscape known as time. So we deduce that the creator intends something more for us than just our mere existence. The purpose behind the things it created must involve change from one state to another state. Thus the purpose of created things must be connected to time as well. Furthermore, our adherence to the laws of creation must be manifested over the time we exist, i.e. our relationship with the creator is the adherence to the ordained laws of creation for the duration of our existence. But we haven't finished our investigation yet, since there is a very special phenomenon we see in the created things in the universe. All created objects and forces are different from each other. And there must be a significance to the intended creation of these differences. There must be a reason why the universe isn't made up of the same substance. There are different kinds of substance, different energies, different forces. Maybe on a basic form, a basic level, they're all the same substance. But certainly on the macro level, on the bigger level, they all look different. They are different colors, different forces, energy, matter, and all other kinds of forces. And we see three basic forms in creation, only three. Inanimate matter, the universe, mountains, planets, stars, inanimate matter, not animate. Life, or what we call animate matter, so matter which is self-animating, I suppose. It comes from the Greek word anima, which means spirit, or spirit within, but it's meant to mean a kind of moving matter. Although we know that all matter moves, but it's actually meant to be a kind of a movement from within, so this is where the word anima came from in the Greek. And a more specific kind of life called humans, or mankind. So these are the three types of creation we see. Is there anything else except these three types of creation? Can anyone think of anything else beyond inanimate matter, life, and mankind? Those are all everything that exists. Sure, I don't know how big the universe is, but I know that it's these three kinds. It can only be these three kinds. All these objects and forces operate within an environment, and they change from one state to another, the end state of their existence being the intended finality of their existence, i.e., wherever you end up is where you're meant to be. Thus, the purpose of all things will and must be realized. So if there's an intention behind our existence, then we will achieve this intention, because the Creator, which is infinite, has no limitation. So if the Creator wishes something for us, or an intention for us, we will reach this intention no matter what. Thus, all things created by the intention of the Creator will have their intended purpose achieved either in this observable reality or in another currently unobservable reality. We cannot assume that all we can see is the only thing that exists. There could be bigger realities than we know about. As individuals, we are regularly discovering newer and bigger realities than we thought possible. And this is borne out in every realm of human-led investigation. These, the kids here in the audience, maybe some of you have only seen America, but I'm sure if you travel around the world, you'll see different realities, you'll learn different cultures, different things, you'll see a bigger reality to what you thought. Maybe as you're studying in this school, you'll be taught about science, about geology, about how the plate tectonics and stars and astronomy, and you'll see a bigger world than you thought, or originally thought possible when you grew up in your house. So we are always discovering a bigger reality than we imagined possible. It stands to reason that purpose-built creation, because a car possesses all the attributes required for luxury transportation. It is rational to conclude that if there is a connection between one's intended attributes and one's intended purpose. So you investigate a car, you see all the attributes of a car. If you spend enough time investigating, you could conclude that it was for transportation and for carrying some kind of creature inside itself. That's the only thing you conclude from looking at the attributes of that thing. So we should start to proceed further in this, we should now begin to examine the attributes of the things we see in the environment of this reality, this created reality. And this will yield clues to inform us to recognize what is the correct narrative or purpose behind our existence. And an explanation of the purpose of creation must explain these three things and the relationship between them for it to actually make sense. So what is the intentionality behind the first kind of objects? Inanimate matter, or the material things in the universe. The universe, as far as we can see, mostly consists of inanimate objects, forces, planets, stars, mountains, suns, nebula, etc. These things exist, undergo change, and are subject to the forces and interactions of other objects. These interactions are governed by the laws of creation, which no object in creation is exempt from. So no object in creation can choose not to follow these laws that part of its creation. From this we can conclude that the purpose of matter, or the material world, is to exist and to react to the changes which affect them according to the universal laws intended by the Creator, and nothing more. However, we should note that without the existence of these inanimate things, we as observers would never be able to reflect upon them and come to the conclusion of the existence of the Creator. So the creation intrinsically bears witness to the origin that caused it. To have a purpose means that if the creation is perfect, every created thing will fulfill it in one way or the other. And inanimate objects will fulfill their purpose by their existence and being subject to the laws of creation. Now, what is the intentionality behind life, or inanimate matter? Each creation possesses different attributes and thus follows different laws. All created things are signs of the Creator. We've established this. And their existence and what happens to them is also intended. But each created thing operates in its own unique way. Living creatures are creatures that behave with organization and intentionality themselves. This intentionality is witnessed by the proactive behaviors they exhibit that aim towards a goal not caused by the immediate circumstance of the object. For example, a rock will not grow by itself. It relies on accidents of its environment to break it down and compress it into bigger chunks of rock like granite, or cooling processes which create crystal formations. But the rock itself is a passive thing. If you leave it in a place, it will do nothing. And until you hit it with a hammer or you throw it into a lava stream. However, life is proactive. It seeks useful materials to absorb and grow, like a plant, with complex chemical processes working in an organized manner to support the survival of the whole object. Life exhibits intentionality to achieve the goal of survival and reproduction. Does a rock have an intention to preserve its existence and to reproduce? No. But animate objects, life does this. Life doesn't stay still. It will be proactive, it will initiate a situation to survive and to make copies of itself. And in complex creatures, the motivation manifests itself in the form of emotions, which carries a reward and punishment mechanism, which is pain and pleasure, which comes as a consequence of fulfilling their goal. If you don't fulfill your goal or you're frustrated, then you feel pain. And if you achieve your goal, you feel pleasure. This behavior is part of the nature of their existence. And if all existence is intended, then their behavior and these attributes of emotions and pain and pleasure is also intended, since they were created with these attributes in the first place. Whether you believe the process of their creation was evolution or divine intervention, the end result is the same. We live in a universe where conditions exist that life can be supported. And there must be a reason for this. But living creation, or some living creation, possesses something else very special: consciousness. And consciousness is a different matter. Consciousness gives creatures the ability to actually witness the creation of God, or the Creator. I went ahead of myself there. Let's call it the Creator for the time being. And experience it. They possess a conscious intentionality, and they witness their own existences in unfolding before them. And this brings us to, I think, a very key question. What is the purpose of consciousness? Consciousness changes this whole discussion, because consciousness is not material, nor would we expect its purpose to be identical to objects that do not possess consciousness, like rocks or plants. They don't possess consciousness. So if a creature possesses consciousness, it must have a slightly more specific purpose, or a different purpose, a slightly different purpose than objects that don't possess consciousness, because there must be an intended reason why they have consciousness in the first place. Materialists cannot explain the existence of the mind, or experiencing, or consciousness. There's no explanation for it. And they can't answer why nature, as they call it, saw fit to include consciousness in living things. Because a computer does all the processes and calculations it needs to do without consciousness. So why do we, with our biological computers, require consciousness? Something that's seeing ourselves seeing, hearing ourselves hearing. This mic picks up my sound waves that I generate from my mouth, but it doesn't listen to me. It's not hearing me. But you can hear yourself pick up sound waves, and you can see yourself seeing light waves which translate into electrical signals. There's a witness inside you which is seeing these things. What's the point of this witness? What is this witness? And how can basic matter, produce this witness, immaterial witness inside yourselves? What is this witness? Consciousness, then, we can at least agree, allows creatures to witness creation, and this we can deduce must be because Their relationship with the creation is to experience the signs of the Creator's existence. Not just be part of the signs, but to experience the signs of the Creator's existence. So this must be the purpose of consciousness. It can only be that purpose. It makes no sense why it should exist otherwise. And conscious beings are not detached witnesses to the world. We're not separate from the world just looking at it. We are experiencers, we are participants, we're in the game. We're not spectators. We experience the intentionality of life directly through emotion, as I said, pain and pleasure. And we're not just witnesses, but we are participants. We're in the driver's seat, so to speak. Then there must be something greater than merely existing which conscious beings must fulfill. And there must be something greater than merely witnessing that conscious beings must fulfill. And then I come to the issue of pain and pleasure. Pain and pleasure is a sign of a higher natural law than that of the rock. Because rock doesn't experience pain and pleasure. Yeah, plants respond to stimuli, but they don't experience pain or pleasure. So there must be a purpose, a reason for pain and pleasure. This is because it is intended that we possess these attributes. And these are basic motivational forces inside us that connect us to causality in the universe and move us to secure higher objectives than merely being passive. When we fulfill an instinct or an emotion, we are rewarded with pleasure. And when we fail to fulfill a desire or to escape a cause of pain, we feel frustration. There must be a significance to experiencing these things, rather than just mindlessly responding to stimuli. We are experiencing these things. The Creator of the heavens and the earth, the universe, wants us to witness ourselves in our pursuit of our own purpose. So we are not just now witnesses to the existence of this Creator, we are now witnesses to ourselves inside this universe, pursuing the purpose, pursuing the natural law of our existence. We witness that the conscious beings are not always able to fulfill their emotional drives. But there must be a reason why they cannot fulfill their emotional drives. If their emotional drives are intended to propel them, to push them forward, to do something, and if they're not able to fulfill it, then there must exist some kind of balance to this. There must be a reason to this, some kind of redress for this, because we know that the universe cannot be flawed, because an infinite being is not limited by imperfection. So it can't be flawed. So there must exist some place, some other reality beyond our reality where there is this true fulfillment of our purpose if we are unable to fulfill our drives in this reality. There must be some external reality as well that maintains a balance of our frustrations or our successes. The requirement to the perfection of the intention behind our emotions and intention behind our consciousness is called, I'll call it justice. Let's use this word, justice. But since we see that justice is not always manifested in its observable reality, the Creator may have created an extended reality outside our current observation, outside of what we can see, where this intentionality is realized. And this, and some people may call this an afterlife. Although this would only be speculation, because we can't directly detect an afterlife, but it would seem to make sense to answer why we have emotions, but we're not always able to fulfill these emotions if these emotions are intended to exist in ourselves. Now, brings me to I think the main question of today, and this will be the final point, and it will end on this crux, which is, what is the intentionality or purpose behind human beings, ourselves? Because animate matter that has emotions and experiences emotions would constitute the animals, the animal kingdom. So animals, they experience reality, they witness the creation, they experience pleasure and pain. Some animals die without being fulfilled, other animals die being fulfilled. So we can deduce that if they were intended to witness their fulfillment or not, and some of them are not fulfilled in their purpose, and some of them are fulfilled in their purpose, there must exist another reality where these animals might go, where there'll be a final justice for this. It wouldn't make rational sense. Because why do they have emotions in the first place, which they can't fulfill, and some could? So, but now I'm going to speak about more specifically humans, because we are now different from animals. Humans as creation possess the same purpose as the rest of creation and conscious beings. We also act as witnesses of creation to the existence of the Creator. But the human being is observably more complex than any other living creature we can observe. The complexity of humans encompasses three things which make us different from animals. Our ability to think, or as scientists call it, meta-thinking, which allows us to examine our own selves, our environment, and our context. This allows us a greater appreciation of our existence, emotions, and relationships with the external world. Sure, animals can recollect things, they can recognize things, and they can be trained and recognize trained behaviors. But animals can't think abstractly, construct a mental model of the world, make changes to it, derive new solutions to problems outside of just what you could call trial and error. So animals do trial and error to find solutions. But they can't sit back, appreciate a problem, and then come with a new solution spontaneously. It's never been observed in any experimentation. They don't come up with a spontaneous solution. They keep doing something, trial and error, trial and error, and trial and error, until something works, and then they'll keep doing. Then they'll do what works. Or they'll remember something they did before that works in a similar situation, and they'll do that, and they'll try that solution. But to actually generate a new solution to the problem, they cannot. When two tribes of monkeys fight each other, you never see, and one tribe gets beaten, you never see them facing the other monkeys in round two with a better strategy, or a better tactics, or a new ambushing tactics, or new means of warfare or weapons. You'll never see that. There's no development, there's no improvement, unless it was by, they discovered it accidentally. So our ability to think makes us very distinct, and we can imagine very complex situations for ourselves. A complex appreciation of emotions. Animals have experienced the same emotions we do, yes, but we have a deeper appreciation of emotions. Instead of having the attachment of love between two animals, we have romance. It's much more complex on appreciation of the emotion of love, because we add a lot of mental layers onto that concept, onto that emotion, and we have a more finer appreciation. It's why you can see that people go to art galleries, and if you're one of these, I don't know, maybe hillbillies that don't, but if you're not highly cultured and you go to art exhibition, you'll be bored. You'll be bored. Like, yeah, I see pictures on the wall, I see drawings, I see paintings. Yeah, so what? Big deal. But if you have a greater intellectual appreciation to high culture, you might go to art gallery and be amazed. It'll be an emotional roller coaster for you, going from picture to picture, seeing masterpiece after masterpiece. And this is because of intellect and the use of your intellect. The second thing that humans have, different to animals, is we have the ability to store recorded conceptual models of the world, otherwise known as knowledge or information. And that's different from recollection. Recollection is having a memory of a bad experience or a good experience, or a memory. Animals have memory too. But we have knowledge, conceptual models. So animal might see a chair and just see a shape and see see a particular texture, and if it encounters another chair that looks the same, and then it will treat it the same way. But we have a concept called chair, which has a number of legs. So if we see a chair with 3 legs, we will still recognize it to be a chair. Or if we see a chair that's made out of metal, or made out of wood, or made out of foam, or one of those bean bags, which is a strange kind of chair, but still, it's in the general concept, something you can sit on that keeps you up. This is a concept. Animals don't have that ability to conceptualize. We do. It's called knowledge or information. And thirdly, and most importantly, we have the capacity, at least from what we can perceive, to make choices, to actually choose. We can even reprogram ourselves to behave differently. Sometimes it's difficult, but it is possible. You can certainly, even maybe temporarily, you can make yourself do something you wouldn't normally do. So then, the question really is about human beings. What is the purpose behind choice, behind thinking, and behind knowledge? Why did the creator of the heavens and the earth, of the universe, intend us to have choice, to have ability to think, or meta-thinking as the scientists call it, and the ability to hold conceptual knowledge. Why do we have these three things? What's the point of them? What's the purpose of these? The capacity to think and store knowledge gives us the ability to acquire and recognize the truth, or the correct reality, and correct ourselves from bad habits or things which are destructive. The existence of choice within ourselves seems to denote that our relationship with reality is one of a test, because when you go to an examination, many of you kids will go to examination, and if you have multiple choice exams where you're offered different choices, what is this situation you're in? It's a test where you now have to make a choice, seeing if you've made the correct choice based on knowledge or information. If you've studied, it's to show whether you actually know what you're meant to know. And we can choose to acknowledge and submit to our natural law that governs our creation. We can choose to acknowledge the truth, and we can choose to acknowledge and submit to the natural law behind our creation, or not. This is just a factual observation. So now we have a choice to be part of, one with the universe, so to speak, or we can choose to be rebellious or rejecting of the truth and be an aberration of nature. We can choose. And of course, the consequences of our choice will probably be redressed in a different existence, possibly. Then there must be consequence to not fulfilling your purpose. As I said, if the living creatures who are not fulfilled because maybe a sparrow died without being able to eat because it was denied food by other animals, why did God give the sparrow the emotion of hunger and the feeling of being unfulfilled, and then it died? What was the purpose behind that? There must be some redress in another existence then for this. So likewise, if we then reject our purpose consciously, see, the sparrow had no choice in that particular example to not to die of hunger, but we have a choice to reject our purpose or unfulfill our purpose, or not fulfill our purpose. So there must be, I would assume there would probably be a consequence to this. There might be a consequence to this. Humans can choose to become as the truth required them to be. This is because what meta-thinking can do. It creates a conceptual model that allows you to self-reprogram. Thus, you can conform to the truth and make the conscious choice to do so. To consciously submit and recognize the infinite, which is the creator, carries with it a consequence which I assume cannot be exhausted, because you can't exhaust infinity. Likewise, for those who choose to reject the infinite, then justice can only be rationally imparted through a perpetual order existence where the redress of your choices will be made to you without end. The condition of the consciousness in this other reality could be an afterlife, if you want to call it that, and it would probably be the finality and completion of your justice, of the justice to you, the finality of your purpose. Because as I said, just because we exist briefly in this life or this reality doesn't mean that we won't reappear in another reality. You can't discount that, and it would seem to suggest that there might be a strong possibility, but we don't know because we can't observe it ourselves directly. But it would seem to make sense. So then, what is the purpose of our lives? What conclusions have we encountered throughout this entire discussion? We can conclude that we exist as a sign of the power and creation of the creating ability of the Creator. So we are a sign of the Creator's existence, and we are a sign of the Creator's ability to create. The purpose of our lives is to be witnesses to the signs of the Creator's existence, and to voluntarily acknowledge the existence of this Creator. Our purpose is to voluntarily, it would seem, submit to the universal laws assigned to our creation, and as social creatures, we relate to other human beings, presumably by helping them to submit to the laws of their creation as well, and achieve their purpose, and protect those who cannot do it from those preventing them from doing so, who have chosen to reject their purpose. The purpose of our life is to undergo changes until we reach our assigned destiny. And the purpose of our life is to exist according to a higher ideal, being proactive in achieving it, and not passive, only reacting to events when they affect us, but to actually initiate. That is the difference between the living and the dead. Sounds familiar, that phrase. So then how can we obtain knowledge of the natural law behind our creation? Because this is our purpose. The lecture's been answered. The lecture question has been answered. But what is the natural law? How can we obtain knowledge? What is this natural law that we're meant to be following? Because we're very complex creatures. We're not like a stone or a rock where physics is enough to work out what the laws of rocks and matter is, although even now physicists don't know everything, and they're still opening up even new avenues and new horizons of things they didn't know and they are ignorant about. But how do we know our natural law? Because we need to know now. We exist now. We need to know, or at least have a way to recognize or to find it or to deduce it. There must be some kind of way. Our meta-thinking ability and capacity to build abstract mental models of this world, known as knowledge, means that our purpose would probably have to be conveyed to us through the medium of a communication. So the Creator must have, by some means of knowledge, conveyed this knowledge to us. There must be a means that this knowledge can be conveyed to us rationally. It has to exist. And due to our characteristic of having choice, which is intended, the communication cannot be innate. Like, it can't be something that is forced inside you that you must follow, because that would deny the choice. Because we have a choice. So the communication should be one that makes us aware of the truth and the reality we live in, and be authenticated and offer us the choice to accept it or not. That's all we can deduce. Just rationally. I haven't quoted any religious scriptures. I haven't been biased or prejudiced. I've just done rational investigation using the aql, or the intellect. And what do we expect then, this guidance then, from the Creator? I mean, I don't know the means of it. I'm not sure how it's going to be conveyed to us, but what do we expect it to be? What kind of form do we expect it to be in? Or what would it tell us? Or what is the authentication that we can say, right, we know this comes from the Creator? We need some means of authenticating it. So we should know it should come. Here's some criteria I think would make sense. It should come in the form of intelligible knowledge. So it could be understood by us. It must be able to be understood in the form of knowledge. It revealed in a manner which does not coerce people to acknowledge it. So it's not a manner that forces us to accept it, but rather we have a choice to accept it or not. It has to be conveyed to us through some kind of medium or messenger, most likely to be a human, because anything else we probably wouldn't recognize, and authentically preserved in its transmission to us. And of course, the most optimal method of preservation would be writing that we have. This is why writing was invented, to preserve memory, preserve knowledge. The message must contain the communication which confirms and agrees with all the signs in the universe and all the phenomena that we have discussed today in this lecture. So what it tells you must agree with everything we can see around us, our innate nature, the nature of the animate matter, the nature of life. It must agree with all this rational observation we've seen. If there's any inconsistency, it can't, and it does not answer the reality that we exist in, and it's not real, it's not true. It can't be true. How would there be a contradiction? Since the purpose of human existence would define every aspect, facet, and area of our existence, we can expect that the guidance from this Creator to provide a complete and comprehensive way of governing all aspects of human life, society, and thought. If we received a communication that only told us how to pray, but left everything else up to us to make mistakes and not know how to live by, then it's incomplete. That can't be a communication. That can't be our purpose, because every part of our life is based around its purpose. So you can't say, well, yes, you were made to have this very detailed and complex existence, but what I really want from you, the Creator would say, is only just your prayer. Everything else I don't really care about. But why did you create it in the first place? Why did you intend it? My life is bigger than just the praying aspect of my life. So it wouldn't make sense if it's only partial. It must be a complete guidance. It's the guidance that it gives must produce contentment and agree with human nature and achieve fundamental satisfaction for the human being and human society, otherwise known as peace. It must agree with your nature. So if you receive, this is communication said, all human beings cannot reproduce. You're not allowed to have any engagement with the opposite gender. You should be celibate. That can't be a revelation or a communication from the Creator, because we were given the attributes of reproduction. So it disagrees with our nature. It can't be, then that would not be from the Creator. And lastly, since all human beings share the same purpose, because we're all human, the guidance from the Creator should be universal for all human beings and for all times and places. So I posit and I conclude that out of all the opinions, theories and claimed communications from the Creator that exist in the world today, there exists only one that meets and agrees with all these criteria and stands out from other beliefs, theories and ideas like a lighthouse in the dark of night, and that is Islam. Islam, the word deriving from the Arabic root ihtislam, which means istislam, which means submission. Submission to the will, command and natural law of the Creator of existence. And every aspect of Islam agrees with all these criteria which we could deduce. And this by far, whether consciously or intuitively, is the biggest reason people convert to Islam from outside, from a Christianity, from atheism, and so on. Because Islam makes sense, it agrees with all these thinking process we've gone to reach this point. And I will conclude with a few verses which pretty much sum up my entire lecture. It says in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and we did not create the heaven and the earth and that which is between them without no purpose. That is the assumption of those who disbelieve. So woe to those who disbelieve. Do they seek a religion or way of life, the word deen, other than the way of life or deen of God? Well, whatever is in the heaven and the earth submits to Him willingly and will return to Him. Everything in the heaven and the earth submits to Him. So why are we now wanting to be different from everything in the heavens and the earth? People say that human beings make religion based around human beings. So we think the whole world revolves around us, the whole universe revolves around us. And in some cases, in some cults, that the gods we make look like us, which is true for some of these pagan cults. But what does the Quran say? The creation of the heavens and the earth is indeed greater than the creation of mankind, yet most of mankind know not. So we are a small speck in the universe. We're not, the whole universe doesn't revolve around us. We know this after the scientists have looked and investigated, but the Quran has been saying this from the beginning. Of course. And again, there is no creature on or within the earth or bird that flies with its wings, except that they are communities like you. We have not neglected in the register a thing. Then unto the Lord they will be gathered. So now animate matter, conscious matter, has a purpose, and they will have that final fulfillment of their purpose. Again, another ayat, we sent our messengers with clear signs and sent down with them the book and the balance, so that men may conduct themselves with justice. So that our complex existence of humanity, which our emotions and our complexities and the complex situations our minds can create and imagine and invent, we receive a communication that gives us a balance, a way that we can manage all this complexity and do justice to the fulfilling of our purpose and each other's purpose. We can coexist and help each other to actually reach our intended purpose. And of course, then do they not reflect upon the Quran? If it had been from any other than Allah, they would have found within it many contradictions. Contradiction between itself and contradiction between the Quran and the universe and everything that we can see. And there is no contradiction between the rational investigation, which I've deduced purely from observation, and the message of the Quran. And of course, He who created death and life to test you, as to which of you is best indeed, and he is exalted in might and forgiving. Change. You exist, you change, and then you come out of you reach your destiny, and then you come out of existence. Life and death. And between that, it's change. And between that, for us, it is a test because of our choice, and because we experience change and we make choices within this environment of change. And of course, the ultimate one which explains mankind's existence, the Quran says, I did not create the jinn and mankind except to worship me, except to submit to him, except to acknowledge him, and except to believe in him. And I posit that there is no other belief system, theory, or idea, and please bring this up in the question answers, the Q&A, there is no other idea that fulfills all this criteria of what we can expect from a revelation to believe in except Islam. And therefore Islam is the only answer and solution to the big question, what is the purpose in life? It is the acknowledgement that there is one God, He exists, He created everything, and we must submit to Him and be fulfilled by doing so. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله العظيم.
Jazakallahu khairan, Brother Abdullah, for this deep and great lecture. And alhamdulillah, we didn't have a test after this lecture. No. Inshallah, we'll open the door now for questions, if there's any question.
From a logical point of view, how would you explain that the Creator created a
Sorry.
Should I restart the question?
Please.
From a logical point of view, how would you explain that the Creator created minds that assimilate the knowledge, but not necessarily get always to the right answer? It's like the same way of designing a computer, that if you use the ayah, وَمَا أَكْثَرُ النَّاسِ وَلَوْ حَرَصْتَ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ, it's designing a computer system that get to the true answer 10 to 20% of the time.
Okay, so how do we explain that, looking at sort of problem solving using our minds, that we don't always come with the right answer? Well, that's the thing. If we always came with the right answer, then where would be the effort and striving? Where would be the change, the motivation to change? Life exists within strife. And as the Quran says, Allah says that I've made mankind in strife, or in hardship, or in we need to work. So it is part of our intended nature that we must work, and that in every aspect of either physical work and mental work. And if you make a mistake, what does that mean? It means you must prepare yourself to excel further, to keep going and to improve and to change. Because without, it is imperfection that brings change. If something is perfect, it doesn't change. So we exist in change. That means there must be imperfection to our existence, so that we can get from A to B in our change, to reach our destiny, to change, to become, to develop. And that's part and parcel of the intended natural law for our existence. So that's why we don't always get it right. But according to the framework of Islam, getting it right is not the thing that you will be judged upon, because that's outside your control. Like that sparrow example, where the sparrow died, not getting the food because other animals prevented it from getting that food. It's not the reason that it couldn't fulfill its purpose to survive and exist. So it would not be accountable. So we're not accountable for getting it wrong. We are accountable for knowing what the truth is, and when it's our time, our duty now to accept it, acknowledge it, we don't accept it, acknowledge it, for other reasons. For aberrant reasons. For erroneous reasons that we've chosen to follow in derogation of the truth. So that would be the answer.
I wanted truly to thank you, not in the generic, casual meaning of thank you for bringing this intellect and reasoning and philosophy to the concept of creation. It is just incredible. But I have a comment and then a question. Many philosophers and religious authorities, not necessarily Islamic, non-Islamic as well, have dove into this philosophy of creation. And the concept of what comes first, was the creation of the laws of the universe first, and then the objects, or the objects first. In other words, did God first or the Creator first created
Existence in essence.
the law, the time, there is before and after, distance, there is here and there is the interdependency between objects. None can live independently. You need, there's interdependency. The steady state of balance. These are the laws, and then after the laws were created, then we're gonna go and create the object. So I just want to hear your comment on that sequence of process. Now and then my other question is, in order for you to answer the question, what is the purpose of a human being? You went through a sequence of conclusions. Your very initial conclusions that you concluded that, well, the purpose of our attribute of having conscious is actually to witness the creation. And you made a conclusion this is the only way, or the only possibility for the purpose of having conscious.
Yes.
However, it is possible, and that's only for the sake of discussion, that actually the purpose of this attribute could be another law of the universe, which is to regulate relations and interdependency between living matters or human beings, rather really than to witness the creation of the Creator.
Sure. Okay. I'll answer your questions in reverse order. If there are many types of life which can process solutions of problems, and like biological computers, without need of consciousness, like many plants and things like that, and bacteria and so on. So, why is consciousness, which is basically, as scientists are saying, is extraneous? It's additional to the brain. Consciousness is an addition. The mind, they believe it's a byproduct of the brain, but the brain doesn't require it. Right? Because the brain is a computer, they say. It's a mechanistic computer. Now, they haven't been able to answer the question of free will. That's a different discussion. But rather, consciousness has no other function. There's nothing special it does other than just to witness. That's all it does. It is feasible that there can exist brains or types of biological computers, and there really does, that don't require consciousness to solve problems and to regulate the natural laws in the universe and so on and so forth, whatever it is. But then again, the natural laws in the universe are very big things. We're like almost, as some atheists would put it, a chemical scum on a dirty piece of rock. Yeah, so we're infecting a piece of rock, i.e. the planet Earth. So consciousness doesn't add anything special to animate matter, to life, other than just a witness. And we only know it exists because we can see ourselves seeing and hear ourselves hearing. But if I was to dissect human brain or use electromagnetic resonance imaging and so on and so forth, I couldn't find consciousness. I can't find it. Can't find it in the brain. I can't find it. Scientists can't find it. They don't know how it's formed. They have theories. They don't know. There's no experimental evidence they can produce to find it. So some scientists believe it's not even needed. And it's not required. And if you think about it, it's not really required. Unless it's required to witness. And that's the only explanation. As for what came first, the chicken or the egg, the laws or objects, I suppose this mirrors some early Muslim philosophical debates on, does essence precede existence or existence precede essence? What I would say is, in my opinion, it's irrelevant to this discussion, because whether laws came first or the objects came first, they both exist and they both were created and they both exist together. But in my personal opinion is, I think they were created simultaneously, because as soon as they would both come to existence, you can't have one without the other. Basically, that would be my personal opinion, but it's irrelevant to the question, because we don't need to know necessarily the full mechanisms of how God created the universe, but we know that there was a creator who created the universe, and everything that exists is the result of his creation. But of course, we should explore how the mechanism behind the creation of the universe, because the more we explore, the better we understand the creator. And this is what the Quran commands us to do: to observe, to think, to reflect, and look at the ayat of Allah. And as I like to say, that as Muslims we have two holy books: the ayat of Allah in the Quran, and the ayat of Allah in the universe. So this is my answer. I hope that's That's your point. Any question from the back? There's deathly silence at the back.
Any question?
Sister at the back?
You said that the first cause, there are two traits, that the first cause is infinite, and what was the other one?
Unlimited.
And unlimited. So we know that there is no creator to the creator because of what does not exist. Basically, that you can't have something that creates something else because it's just going to be an infinite change. So then
Yes.
we know that Allah is infinite because it cannot be anything other than.
Yes. I suppose a more fundamental question is, why does something need to be caused? Is the question. Why does something need to be caused? Need to have a start point? Or, I mean, as I said, take any object. I mean, I'll try to find a non-man-made object, because atheists always accuse me of using the watchmaker argument, as they like to call it. So I use a rock, if I could find one, but I never seem to have one. I would bring it on the airport, but I suppose the customer would ask me why I'm bringing a rock into the country. So, all right, here we go.
Catch.
If you pass it here. All right. Okay, it's a man-made brick, but all right, it will do for now. All right. Okay. So imagine this was a naturally occurring rock that happened to be rectangular in shape. The question is, why does this have a certain size, shape, form, mass, color, volume? Why is it not twice as big as it is, or half as big as it is, or a different color? It's not completely orange. Why is it a kind of greyish color with various other pieces inside it? Why is it not one whole? Why is it a composite of larger chunks? Why is it the way it is? What you're really asking is, what defined the limits it has? What determined or measured out those limits, those parameters of its existence? If you are a computer programmer, I think some people might here are. I think that probably might be a computer programmer. What do you do when you create a virtual object in 3D rendering? You define its parameters. It says you cause the object to come into existence, so to speak, in the computer program. So when the atheist says, "Oh, well, you say everything needs to be created, but what about God? Doesn't God need to be created?" This is their counter argument. They think, and they're very smart about it as well. Haha, I've got you now. But the response is, okay, show me which limit of God requires to be determined by something else, or what limit does God possess in His nature that was determined? Because we say it's unlimited. Unlimited, infinite actually mean the same thing. Unlimited, infinite, they're interchangeable. But no limit, and there's no finite aspect of it. So where is the requirement for anything to be determined or measured out or created in God? Nothing. And that's why we say that He's not finite, He's not created, because He's not limited. And the only definition of the term for infinite and unlimited is obviously in English, not limited and not finite, because we don't have any other, as limited creatures, we don't have any other definition to define this entity. Of course, now I'm going to bring in the Islamic aspect, and this requires revelation to answer, because there are things you can't deduce. Your mind can only take you so far, and then you require revelation. So, this God being merciful, for example. Merciful, yeah, this is an attribute of God, yes. But unlike a definition for God being unlimited and infinite, the attribute defines His relationship with us, His chosen relationship with us. So He chooses to be merciful to us, and if something is merciful, you say, if something it shows mercy in a relationship with other people or other things, you call it merciful. Right? That's it. Okay, it's the English language, of course, we're discussing. It's obviously in Arabic. Different word, rahma. And of course, if something creates something else, it's defined by that relationship. It's called a creator. So these are attributes which this thing has chosen to have for itself, i.e. by its relationship with us. But its intrinsic definition, of this creator, infinite and unlimited, is outside our ability to comprehend. And so this is our answer to the atheist, is that in the aspects of what it is, we can't define it, and because it's not limited and nothing defined it didn't require to be caused in the first place. But everything else which defined requires to be caused. To answer your question.
Other question? One other question.
Jazakallah khair. The question is this. You mentioned that we are just nothing more than a speck in this whole universe. So planet Earth compared to the whole universe is a small speck. What's the purpose of the remainder of the universe? If God only created Earth so we can live on it, did God subhanahu wa ta'ala created the whole universe to support life on Earth so we can, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can test us? Or these other planets and other galaxies, they have any creatures on them, just like there's on Earth?
Okay. It's an interesting question. That's mostly a scientific question because we have to now determine, investigate the universe. But our answer is, and I made it very clear, when I talked about the purpose of inanimate objects in my lecture, I said that their purpose is to exist, and their very existence is a testimony of God's, of the Creator's power and his ability to create. And that's it. That's all. To imagine they were created for us is an assumption because we're very human-centric, right? But the Quran says that the creation of the heavens and the earth are greater, much greater than the creation of mankind. So we think that the entire universe revolves around us. The Quran doesn't say that. It doesn't say the universe revolves around us. Yeah, sure, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted us the ability to subject the universe, what we can in our power, to serve our purposes. That's fine. But we can't penetrate the deepest heavens, the deepest space. And as the Quran says, you know, if you were able to penetrate the heavens, then penetrate them. But you would only penetrate them with Allah's authority or permission. Right? And it was actually referred to man and jinn, if you could penetrate the deepest heavens. So it comes from an assumption, maybe a medieval assumption, possibly it was quite popular in medieval Christianity to believe the entire universe revolves around us. And at that time, when all you could see was the night sky, you didn't know how big the universe was, so many people imagined or assumed that the universe revolves around mankind. But whether the Bible says that or not, I'm not sure, maybe it does, but the Quran doesn't say that at all. So it's an assumption. Everything that exists is as a result of God's will for as He sees fit, and the existence of inanimate matter is in itself a worship of God, a testimony to God's power and ability. But we are one of many creations in this universe, and we have each creation has its own law system, an own special kind of law, whether it's physics or a law of the jungle or a human law, as you say, a law for human beings. And our purpose is unique and specific to us. Everything else will fulfill its purpose in its own way, and for its own objective, and that's between it and God, not us necessarily. But yes, we have a relationship with animals, we have a relationship with the mountains and the land and the farms and the things, and our relationship is governed by God's permission to use this. So we have permission from God to use other things that have their own purpose between them and God for our purposes as well. But let's not make the assumption that everything exists for our benefit only. This is us being human-centric.
On the day of judgment, everything is going to cease, or is just alive on Earth? Is there life on all these galaxies? Is there anything happening?
In terms of other creatures, all I know, and it's only based on...
It makes sense that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created all these planets and galaxies. There's something on them, or there's life just like here.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, what lives on Jupiter? You know, what lives on Venus? I mean, I suppose they sent probes there. They haven't seen anything, and Jupiter is just a big gas ball, just full of gas. It's not solid. So, as I said, things exist, and they exist between its relationship between it and its creator. We shouldn't now think that they exist for us. You see, that's an assumption. But we exist within this big reality, and we have because we have extra attributes, we have extra special purposes within this universe, and that is to witness, because we are conscious. Animals also witness, and maybe there are other animals on other planets possibly as well, which are not thinking creatures. God knows best. I don't know. Maybe if we send a probe to other planets, we can find or not. We'll see. But all I know is that there only exists jinn as well as human beings, and I rely on revelation from this, not on science, because we haven't been able to prove jinn existence or not, or whether there's what's it tells the unexplained kind of things, whether you have ghosts and poltergeists and whatever. I don't know about these things, but I rely on revelation for the issue of jinn. As for any other alien life which is like us, I have no idea, and God hasn't seen fit to tell us of that, so I don't know. Wa alaikum assalam.
Just comment. Logic requires the existence of Allah, or somebody who started things. Like if this rock existed here, somebody must have brought it in here. That's how the universe works. Now, so the logic requires that there is a starter, somebody who started everything. Now, logic cannot explain how the starter worked, because it is beyond this world. But as far as the universe and the existence of logic, the logic would not exist without a starter. So if we don't have starter, then even the laws of logic will break down, and we cannot really proceed.
Okay, it reminded me of the first person within the Muslim civilization that used this argument, which was the Rasulullah when he encountered a Bedouin. A Sahaba, one companion of his, was debating this Bedouin hours and hours and hours. Bedouin was not having it. Bedouin saw no reason to believe that God existed or there was any higher power. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ encountered this Bedouin, saw these people arguing, and spoke to the Bedouin and used a reality that Bedouin would understand. And he said, if you saw on a desert prints on the ground, what would you conclude from this? And he would say it was probably a camel had passed by, or hoof prints probably. And then obviously we know they said, well, look at the stars. These are the footprints, so to speak, of God, i.e. the evidence of God didn't come by itself, like those prints in the sand. But there was something very interesting, though. Though you could conclude that maybe if you saw hoof prints, that it was a camel that was walking across the desert, or you can't conclude what color that camel is. You can't conclude that. You can't conclude if it, possibly if the camel was carrying any luggage or anything like that. You couldn't be able to conclude it, as long as it wasn't too heavy. Then it would be a deep hoof print. I know what someone might say now, but you wouldn't be able to know this if the camel was wearing a particular kind of clothing that camels can wear. The Arabs can, saddle, for example. You wouldn't be able to conclude this. All you conclude is the camel came, because you weren't able to observe the nature of the camel. You only observed that it was a camel, or it was even if it was an indistinct print, it could have been anything. It could have been a human, an elephant, or whatever. So we can only conclude that there exists an infinite, unlimited thing. But what does infinite, unlimited? What is this thing? What does it look like? If that even has any meaning to say what something can look like. But what is it, or what? How can we describe it further? I can't. We're unable to describe any further than that, because we are limited. We're finite. We are unable, and that's all we can say is not finite, not limited, not us, not the universe. That's the only thing we can say about it. And so we conclude that it exists. As to its specific nature, like, is it merciful? Does it show mercy? Does it show kindness? Does it show generosity? I don't know. We rely on revelation. Although you could say that seeing a lot of the signs in the universe, why like human beings live and they have sustenance, that there is a generosity there. Maybe you could have this conclusion. But will there be a mercy in the next life or in another life from this creature, from this whatever this thing is being? Will this being show us mercy or not? Or we don't know exactly what it will do with us. So this relies on revelation. So there's a limit to the human mind, and there's a limit to logic, and there's a limit to rational investigation. And all I'm proposing in this discussion is how far we can go, what we can conclude, and then come up with a criteria that can help us recognize when we see the truth and reject when we see the falsehood, or reject if a false idea is get or taught to us. That's all we can conclude.
I have the last question actually.
Sure.
I know the subject was really behind your Islam. Can you just tell us exactly how that happened and tell us the story behind that?
At the end of the hour? Okay, I'll be very brief, as brief as I can. I went to a Christian school. My family was, one parent was Christian, Catholic, other parent was secular. And I basically, for all intents and purposes, was a Christian. I went to when the school went to mass, where they give you the bread and the wine and all that thing, the communion. And for all intents and purposes, I thought this was the truth, the reality. And then when I encountered the other religions or other concepts that there are, I read a book on religious education, and there were different kinds of truth, different other explanations to the universe and to why we exist and our purpose. I said to myself, well, how do I know that Christianity is correct and the other beliefs are not correct? Because is it just geography or an accident of my birth which made me Christian? Maybe if I was born in Arabia, I'd be Muslim. If I was born in India, I'd be Hindu. I would be Buddhist or in Tibet or wherever. So surely geography or accident can't determine the truth. It doesn't make any sense. And there can't be many truths to the same question, because they are contradictory. So I decided to leave Christianity and investigate. But it always made sense to me that there was a God. And I didn't know about the afterlife after leaving Christianity, but I thought if there's a possibility of hell, I made my own little prayer, I made a little deal with God. I said, if I make it, I'm leaving Christianity. I don't mean to reject you. I just don't know what the truth is. So don't punish me, please. If you cannot tell me the truth, if you show me the truth, I promise I'll follow it, and I'll tell the world about it. All right. So please, show me the truth and don't punish me. All right. And I was, I think, 11 or 12 at the time, and so I started to read, and I read everything you could imagine. America, Buddhism, Jainism, Rastafarianism, Mormons, Moonies, Wiccans, various pagan beliefs or polytheist beliefs from various centuries of Greek mythology, Aztec mythology, and so on and so forth. I read everything you could imagine: black magic, white magic, everything, New Age spirituality, everything I could find. And my initial theory was that maybe if I piece it all together, I bring all these ideas together, and I found what they all have in common, that would be the truth, or that might be the truth, what they all agree on. But they were saying some wacky things, and something didn't make sense. And so I played a process of elimination game. I eliminated the things that didn't make sense, that contradicted themselves, and I started to whittle it away. So I said, right, Buddhism, purpose in life is to reach enlightenment. Enlightenment means to know your purpose in life. But then I've already reached my enlightenment. I know what it is. That would be circular, makes no sense. Besides, karma. So doing good, doing bad, it will come to you in another life, and you get reincarnated. Who made that process of reincarnation? Who's keeping score? Who's got the scorecard on your karma? Who's monitoring the system? And who put that system in the first place? Doesn't make any sense. Discounted. Hinduism. Hinduism is a whole bunch of different beliefs. They're different. Depending on which Hindu you meet, they'll tell you something different. But generally, the idea was that we were all part of God. God split into pieces one day for some unknown reason. Maybe it was molting in their belief. And then we now have to live in this life of suffering and get back to God through enlightenment and seeking enlightenment. Okay, all right then, but let's pause that there. Why are we ignorant of what enlightenment is? Because if God's all-knowing and we're part of God, we'd be all-knowing too. It doesn't make any sense. Why did God suddenly decide to split himself into pieces? That didn't make no sense. How can God change if he exists without time and space? That doesn't make no sense. Discounted. Okay, now we get into the Abrahamic faiths. So we have, let's start with Christian. Okay, I'll leave that to the end. Trinitarian Christianity. A belief that God became finite, so the infinite is finite. Contradictory, makes no sense. The incarnation. The Trinity. There are 3 wills, 3 different wills, and each will has infinite power. But that's actually 3 gods. Because what is the definition of a God? It's a will with infinite power. So that's three gods. And if there's more than one God, which have infinite power, they'd all limit each other out of existence. And they'll be limited and not unlimited. And then why three? Why not 4 or 5 or 6 or 10? Who determined that finite number? See? Doesn't make sense. I've also refuted polytheism accidentally, but okay. So that's Trinitarian Christianity out the way. Now we're left with Judaism, right? Judaism, okay, monotheism, belief in a universal law behind mankind, that's great, but only for the Jews, and the law doesn't apply to anybody else. But we are all human, so surely it applies to all of us. That doesn't make any sense. That's not what I expected from a revelation. It must be universal. Remember I said my criteria must be universal, applicable to all human beings. So it's close, but no cigar, as they say. So then now I'm left with Unitarian Christianity, which is an old sect which died out because it was persecuted by the Trinitarians, where they believe in one God and that Jesus is not God, and they're Christian. That's fine, but the only book they have is the Bible, which has been corrupted by the testimony of the historians, and the Unitarians Christians themselves will admit it's been corrupted because they disagree with some bits they say the Trinitarians wrote into that Bible. And who wrote the Bible in the first place? Where's the authentication of this communication? They don't have it. So the authenticity criteria is not met, discounted. Remember my criteria. So what are we left with? It's the Quran. It's Islam. Monotheism, a comprehensive way of life, explains everything in existence, our purpose, life, and inanimate objects matter. Like these verses I quoted. I could quote it more, but for brevity, I had to quote only those verses. And of course, it's been revelated. It's not the Prophet Muhammad wasn't the first prophet to introduce Islam. Only the current iteration of Islam. There's been prophets since the first human being, all around. In fact, it probably explains why there's a lot of religious similarity in all the world religions and beliefs, because they are originally all corruptions of an original common religion, which was the monotheistic religion. And as archaeologists, if an archaeologist was searching for Islam, they wouldn't find it, because we don't have a statue to dig up out of the ground. So monotheism predates polytheism, not all the way around, as they like to suggest. And we know this because the Quraysh were originally, so the pagan Arabs were originally monotheists, then they became polytheists. And even the ancient Israelites, they temporarily courted polytheism, and then they were brought back into monotheism again, with all the prophets coming down. We know this from the Torah. So Islam is the only thing that literally makes sense. It explains everything. It explains your life. It explains why we suffer, why we enjoy, why we experience, why we change, what we're here to do, why we have different durations of life, why some people have better intelligence or better wealth or the disparity amongst human beings is explained. Everything is explained. So quite literally, it's not the case that even if I didn't know the miracle of the Quran from the literary sources, it's literary miracle. Even if I didn't know that, and I didn't when I first converted to Islam, I didn't know that. Only when I came into later, I discovered there's a mu'ajiza, there's a miracle of the Quran in the Quranic language. Even if I didn't know that, Islam is the only option to choose anyway. It's the only other possibility. There's no other possibility. There's nothing except what the Islamic narrative says. So how could I not accept it when I discovered it?
جزاكم الله خير.
Thank you.